Just as a reminder, here's a map of Crossrail drawn by an artist rather than a cartographer. The Crossrail route goes from Reading and Heathrow in the west. It's about 120 kilometres overall to Shenfield in the northeast and to Abbeywood in the southeast. The central section in white is 21 kilometres of twin-bore tunnel, 10 new stations, all co-located with existing London Underground stations and connected to them. And that central section takes about 85% of the funding. And the remainder in the dark blue is an extensive renewal of existing infrastructure, including 30 stations, which will get a refurbishment ranging from a sort of lavish lick of paint to a major renewals programme. The central section of Crossrail opens at the end of 2018 and will run 24 trains per hour in the central section. As Pete just said, and as Mark Kahn said in his presentation earlier today, it's handy to start off with the funding in place, with the front-end engineering done, and with a hybrid bill which takes care of the necessary consents. And broadly speaking, Crossrail is jointly funded by the Department for Transport and by TfL. And there are also contributions from others, from the private sector, from the Canary Wharf Group and from Berkeley Homes. And apart from the money, these funding arrangements are important because they define the governance as well. A joint sponsor board of the Department for Transport and TfL, supported by a full joint sponsor team. And I think these governance arrangements have worked pretty well, and the NAO and the Public Accounts Committee last year agreed. An alternative might have been to make Crossrail a major project within TfL. But the Crossrail team has been able to focus exclusively on delivering the programme on time and on budget. And again, remembering back to what Mark Kahn said in opening the conference this morning, taking on the challenge of looking into the future, where all the media focus and from government is on day-to-day operations, can be very difficult. And one of the joys of working on Crossrail is that we are able to focus wholly on delivering our programme on time and on budget. So if there is a Crossrail 2, my view is that they could do a lot worse than following the same governance model as we've had on Crossrail 1. We've recently achieved two major milestones. The first of those, tunnelling by the 8 tunnel boring machines, is complete, and we had the Prime Minister and Boris Johnson underground at Farringdon, where the last TBM completed the route from Canning Town to Farringdon, and we had both of them down there to prove it. The second, slightly less well publicised milestone was that the Crossrail TOC, MTR, Mass Transit Railway, has taken over running the Shenfield to Liverpool Street line under the name of TfL Rail. And once the new rolling stock is delivered and the stations refurbished, this will be part of the Crossrail route under the Crossrail brand. The civil engineering and construction isn't all finished, as we still have about 20% of the spray concrete lining in the platforms and cross passages to complete, as well as the creation of the platforms themselves. And once this is done, the tunnels can be cleared for the railway systems contractors to come in. As you may have seen, some of the stations are already at an advanced stage, and you may even have visited the retail facility above the Canary Wharf station, which is already opened under the name of Crossrail Place. And this was one of the stations which was partly funded privately by the Canary Wharf Group. So that was all a bit of sort of history and where we've got to. We're now entering what our media team like to call the second half. So that's the fitting out of stations, the installation of the railway systems, the track, the power, the ventilation, communications, leading into testing and commissioning, handover, trials and bringing into service, so that we can open the central section on time in December 2018, which slightly alarmingly is only 3 years away. So I thought I'd spend a few minutes on some of the things that are going to be important in order for us to complete Crossrail successfully. The first of those is safety, and safety remains our top priority and a core value. And the safety threat changes as we move from heavy civil engineering to MEP and systems, and we have more smaller contractors and subcontractors. We've had one fatality in underground construction, and we're determined that in partnership with our supply chain that we'll do everything in our power to make sure that our people and the people around us return home safely every day. And as well as construction safety, we increasingly need to focus on delivering a railway which is safe to operate and maintain. And much of this can be delivered through infrastructure and systems. The platform train interface, obviously, and minimising the number of people needed to work on the track. And again, when Mark Kahn was talking earlier today about the digital railway, he referred to remote condition monitoring and digital asset information, about which I'll say a little bit more later. And both of those are a part of the Crossrail programme. Safe also means replacing assets such as lights and panels, LED lighting, lightweight cladding, and doing all of those things as a safer way as possible, not making people work from height, not making people carry heavy loads over awkward distances up and down escalators and so on. And we're working very closely with Rail for London so that any risks which can't be eliminated through construction are passed safely to the operator to mitigate, and they're working with us to do this. There's also no doubt in my mind that quality goes hand in hand with safety, and generally the standard of quality on Crossrail has been very good. We have a very good culture of reporting and fixing defects, and our paper project of certification is keeping up with the physical works, which is something, in my experience, which rarely, if ever, happens on major projects. And to deliver Crossrail successfully is also to deliver it sustainably. I sometimes, very occasionally, hear about people talking about environmental issues as a nice to have. Well, not in our book. It is part of delivering Crossrail successfully. And our latest sustainability report is going to be published 3 weeks today, and if you're interested, you can just log on to our website and read a copy. Sustainability for us includes the social, economic, and environmental legs, and I think Crossrail has helped to move the industry forward in a number of areas. In the economic area, through our supply chain management, and in giving small and medium-sized enterprises an opportunity to bid successfully in some of our contracts. In the social area, through training, you may know that we've built the Tunnelling and Underground Construction Academy, TUCA, and we recently passed through the 10,000th student undergoing training at the academy. We've also just passed the 400 mark in apprentices, and I think probably more important almost than the number of apprentices that we've employed on Crossrail, I think we've helped industry to restore apprentices as part of the construction and rail industry scenario after quite a long period where, for some reason or other, the government thought that apprenticeships weren't important. In the environmental area, through carbon reduction in construction and operation, and noting that 85% of energy used on Crossrail will be used in operation, and by reducing harmful emissions by plant on site, our work on control of noise and vibration, and shown in the slide here, our partnership with the Royal Society for the Protection of Birds in taking 3.1 million tonnes of our excavated spoil to a bird sanctuary in Wallasey in Essex. The challenge now, as far as sustainability is concerned, is not to snatch defeat from the jaws of victory and to make sure that we keep this all going to the end, and in addition to that, to make sure that we focus on biodiversity in the restoration of our sites as we finish the work and come to hand them over to their eventual owners. Crossrail is on budget, or within its funding envelope, as we tend to call it, in order to emphasise the fact that we will only spend as much of the funding allocated to us as we absolutely need to. And featured on this is our Financial Director, David Allen, who keeps a very close eye on all of us. There are cost pressures, obviously, in maintaining our schedule and our critical path. And there are commercial relationships to manage with our supply chain, who bid for these jobs in more austere times and also want to turn a profit. We've not had requirements creep, and we intend to keep it that way. And referring back to my remarks about governance, I think having the DfT and TfL as our joint sponsors has been a major factor in ensuring that the requirements have not changed really at all since the start of the job. We're now working hard with the operators as to how they will operate and maintain the railway, and that again can cause cost pressures, and we're working hard with them to keep that under control. A number of speakers before coffee talked about innovation, and for a project we're quite unusual, I guess, in having an innovation program ourselves called Innovate 18, which again you can access on our website. And I won't say much more about that because Tim Embley and Lydia Walpole are sitting here in the front row, and I think are going to speak to you in a few minutes. And they are both part of the Crossrail Innovation Forum, which is our partnership with industry. Innovation in technology and processes has an important part to play in Crossrail, albeit that we don't regard ourselves as the R&D department for industry. On this picture is Custom House Station, where the major structures were manufactured off-site by Lang O'Rourke at their factory in Steakley and assembled on-site with a gantry crane, which you can see there. It's not digital, although it's enabled by digital technology, but it does give you better quality, fewer people on site for a shorter time, and therefore safer. People very often ask me who is the integrator of Crossrail, as if there was some massive brain somewhere who was pulling the whole of a £15 billion project together. And the fact is that everybody has a role to play in integration, and much of the integration activity is written into contracts, requiring different elements of the programme to integrate with one another in design and in construction. Crossrail, through something which we call the Rail Integration Authority, sits on top of the pyramid and ensures that all this activity has been done and gives direction where it's required. But it doesn't do all the integration activity itself. That is the accountability of all sorts of people across the whole of the programme. And we're going through a major sort of communication and training effort, particularly as we go into the MEP and systems area, to ensure that everybody understands that very clearly. We can help ourselves a lot in this regard by managing and integrating our information into a common data environment which we can package up and hand over to the infrastructure managers, London Underground, and there it is, and RFL. I think the metaphor here is, whereas on the left you've got your collection of CDs, which are assembled by our supply chain, but when it goes into the common data environment, it enables us to pull together a playlist of whatever it is that you want, and we can then package that up and pass it out to the infrastructure managers for maintenance and operation. This is important because the common data environment, which you see sitting at the bottom there, provides the information backbone to run the whole of the railway. And this is the digital railway that several speakers and Mark Kahn earlier today were talking about. Having all the information digitally will also help us bring the railway into service. And here's just a snapshot of some of the activities which are planned for the last 18 months of the programme. There isn't a huge amount of experience in the UK of bringing new railways into operation. Most of the physical works will be completed by this stage, but the handover, assurance and system safety documentation will all have to be finished before we can bring the railway into service. And finally, lest this all sounds a bit technical, I am a firm believer that in the end, Crossrail is above all a human endeavour which will be delivered by people working hard, intelligently and collaboratively.
Just on that whole point about training and apprentices, and I mean, I have to say that it was wonderful there to see these young women who are engineers, and the balance is much better than it is in this room. So is it a slow process to recruit? I mean, are you getting enough women coming forward?
No, we're not getting enough women coming forward. How to address that? If you go, I went to give a lecture to a sixth form physics group in Highgate School about a year ago. In that sixth form physics group, there was not one single girl.
It used to be done at primary school.
So you have to, you know, it's parents, it's teachers, and as far as teachers are concerned, you know, you can't just hope that the teachers know about engineering. I think there's a duty for us in the industry to make sure that the teachers, when they're talking to the children, know how to describe engineering, particularly to the girls, because if they don't do it, you know, you can't expect anybody else to do it. So it's a very big job, and by the time people have made their GCSE and AS and A-level choices, it's getting too late. Having said that, I do know that at UCL, they are planning to take some undergraduates into engineering courses who don't have a science background. So hats off to them. UCL have been in the news for a sort of diversity issue of another sort recently, but hats off to them for trying that, and let's hope that it works.
And also you're alluding to the fact that it's like the government, or obviously not government of this complexion, but the government has kind of woken up to the idea that apprenticeships are incredibly important. I mean, it was Tony Blair that said that 50% had to go to university. For many people, that was just the most dreadful thing to say, because it devalued everything else. But in terms of what we're doing in Germany are doing with apprentices, are we anywhere near it?
Well, funnily enough, I was attending a similar meeting, which is another campaign called Engineering Technician, which is linked to apprenticeships. This is an initiative by the three engineering institutions, the IMechE, the ICE, and the IET, forgive the acronyms, about promoting engineering technicians, which is the lowest tier of professional engineering qualification. I hope everybody knows about it. I hope everybody's supporting it. On the same rostrum, there was a chap from Germany, and he said that the decline in apprenticeships had been mirrored in Germany. So if we imagine that, you know, in Germany everything is as it used to be, it isn't, and they're having to go through the same process as we are, is building apprenticeships back into the professional development of young people. I
just find at this point, is this more fun than building Camp Bastion?
It's a bit more busy.
Yes. No one firing at you.
No, there's a very good photograph somewhere in some archive somewhere of a Royal Engineers officer getting out of a Land Rover and sort of digging his heel in and saying, "Let it be here." And then 10 years later, there's a place, you know, the size of a large town.
Yeah.
So those opportunities are few and far between.